Welcome to Halftime. I'm Doug Piper, and I'm a Halftime alumni from Greenville, South Carolina, in the USA. This is our 50th Halftime webinar event, and I'm so appreciative that so many of you have joined us today. Halftime is the world's leading peer learning center for successful people who are in transition. And we teach, coach, and connect leaders who are looking for more meaning, joy, and impact in their next season. Please let me know in the chat if the video and the audio are looking okay. We can't really tell on our end, so if you'll type in there that the audio sounds okay and I look as good as I can, that'll really help us. Also, down at the bottom, we have a poll. If you would answer our very brief poll that we've got, that'll prioritize Jason's discussion. It'll also help us with future programming. Now, I think you're really going to enjoy today's event. Distraction or redirection, focusing our impact, but also allowing for spontaneity. I want to get the rest of our crowd here on screen. Welcome, Jason and Lloyd. This is a great topic, as I know it really happens more often than we might expect. Now, I know most seek Halftime Institute when they're seeking clarity, maybe wondering what's next. And we help them listen to their heart, their spouse, family, and God, and then gain vision and a game plan to make their season the very best it can be. But now, how do we deal with something we come face to face with that grabs our heart, but it's not part of our vision or game plan? It might be a global crisis, a family in need, or systemic injustice. And just how do you know if this is a distraction or really redirection, as the Good Samaritan parable in the Bible? Experience teaches us that staying focused is much more important than spontaneity, and still too many drift from their mission and become sloppily busy. On the next 30 minutes, Lloyd and I are going to explore how Jason Spaeth's journey, his mission to help Afghan refugees, and also preserve huge swaths of America's grasslands for sustainable ranches and communities, how he came to terms with life-changing seismic events. Now, Jason has an MBA from the University of Colorado. He's now retired from a long career with Vardy Private Equity, but he's managing Kerrigan's Creek Capital and a cattle ranch. He's served on a variety of nonprofit boards. He's married with 3 children and lives in Cora, Wyoming. We're also joined by Lloyd Reeb, Halftime Institute's founding partner. Welcome, Jason and Lloyd. Now, Lloyd, I've heard you say many, many times, get clear, get free, and get going. But I'm really having trouble with a discussion exploring on how to alter our entire game plan. So how do you know when a major disruption is truly redirection and just not a distraction?
Yeah. Well, Doug, that's why we have Jason here tonight, because he has had a track record of being focused over a long, successful career, right, Jason? And you don't have a tendency to chase shiny objects. And you're deep into this halftime journey, you and I together. And so Doug and I felt like this would be, just a perfect thing for you to speak into, both at a practical level and a heart level. And, most of us distill down our next season into 2 important things: our purpose and our platform. And when you get clear on your purpose, that's how you can get free from the low value things you're doing and get going in a platform where you can live out your purpose. But your purpose is most often the convergence of what you're best at, what you care the most about, and the difference you most want to make in the world. And that forms your mission statement: what you're best at, what you care the most about, and your desired results, what the difference you want to make. Now imagine having some clarity around that purpose statement and then designing a platform organizations and roles and perhaps a portfolio of roles that you can live that out. And most of us have a bit of stationary stability around our mission statement, and then we change platforms over time. So, for example, in 1997, 1998, I partnered with Bob Buford to start the Halftime Institute. But as I've gotten older, as you can tell by the color of my hair, we have grandbabies. I don't feel like traveling all over the world as much as I did 15 or 20 years ago to launch this movement in Australia and Africa and Asia and around Europe. And so I want to be more at home. And I now spend more of my time serving in halftime of the Carolinas, where we live here in North and South Carolina. And so my mission has stayed the same, but I have adapted or evolved the platform in which I live it out. So how do you know, Jason, you have had to pivot both your purpose and your platform recently. So thank you for sharing your journey with us. And to start to shape it up, take us back into your first half career so that your fellow halftime alumni get a frame of what you did, how you did it well, and what brought you to this halftime season of your life.
Sure. Thank you, Lloyd, and thank you, Doug. I'm very happy to be here. And to kind of go back to my first half, I spent 20 years in the financial service industry. The last 17 were with Varde Private Equity, as Doug said in his intro. And I spent the vast majority of my career investing in distressed or troubled assets, both here in the U.S. and also in Europe. Had the privilege of spending roughly 5 years over in Europe, opening an office for Varde there, our first non-U.S., non-Minneapolis, Minnesota office. And the firm really took off and grew from there. I left after 17 years following the upcycle from the great financial crisis. We had a very successful last 5 years of investing. Really loved the team. Enjoyed what I did, but like many halftimers, I reached a junction where I knew that I needed to do something different and something more that wasn't so much about Jason, but more about what I can do for others.
And so, Jason, you fell in love with ranching and, in particular, preserving those beautiful grasslands of the middle of the United States. For those of you who are out of the country and other beautiful countries, we have this big swath of grasslands in the middle of the United States. And you've invested a ton of money and time becoming an expert at how to build sustainable ranch lands. So describe what you've been passionate about and share the stories, some stories of that and your vision, like make it come alive. I wish we could kind of do a video, right? And drop in on your, 10,000 acre ranch.
Correct. So my passion is and continues to be one of them on the American West, and probably this fellow called Wallace Stegner said it best. He called the West the geography of hope, and it is a beautiful part of the United States. Mountainous terrain, beautiful riparian areas. And it's home to some of the most iconic wildlife species that the United States has to offer, from grizzly bears to moose to wolves to mule deer, pronghorn antelope. The list goes on and on. But what really caught my attention, the West, as always, is undergoing quite dramatic changes. partially due to the fact that these older ranch lands that were held by families over multiple generations are being sold and subdivided in a lot of ways, and sold kind of to guys like me who want to have a place out west, but only spend part of the year out there. Um, and oftentimes the business that supported the local communities, supported the local people, it gets eliminated from the landscape. And that business in the western part of the United States is ranching. Um, so my hope with our place was to really build a sustainable business that made a profit, but also was operated in a way that created an ecologically vibrant landscape. Um, so right through the middle of our ranch is the second largest ungulate migration in North America. There's mule deer that come through our ranch that travel 5,000 miles in the 5,000 mule deer travel a great distance in the spring and fall, to leave the winter in the fall and chase the green grass in the spring and summer. So to create that ecological vibrancy by using cattle was a great concept to get behind, and it wasn't my idea by any stretch.
So
And in doing so, Lloyd, I thought we could help the landscape keep a large piece of land intact for the benefit of everybody, and also keep a business alive that's very supportive of the local community that I love so much there.
and provide a model, right, for others that want to do the same thing and not just helicopter in, kind of, it's an expensive hobby. The local community dies away. All the vibrancy of this beautiful parts of America go away. The people have to move, and we become like a Disneyland. So that was, in fact, I watched you smile as you talk about it. You've always cared about preserving God's creation. And when we look at Genesis, we're told that's one of the things we were put on this planet to do, is to take care of what he's given us. And so it's a very direct response to the assignment that we were given in the early part of Genesis. So now you and I spent a week together with our lovely wives in Scott River Lodge in Northern California last fall. And it was a time to just sit and think, and with the beautiful Scott River going by. And I know your heart for this, and I've never been to your ranch, but I feel like I have in some ways, because you've made it come alive for me. And yet you started to explore and wrestle with the reality that it might not fit into your life right now, because you've got teenage boys. They're not going to be there forever. They're off to college soon. One's graduating this week, and it takes you away from home. But also you saw some urgent needs emerging right in your own city. So talk about, what that was like for you, and how you had to come to grips with, you might have to let this dream and this passion and calling rest for a while, or maybe abandon it even, and pivot your heart and pivot your efforts, and start learning about a totally new initiative when you started seeing Afghan refugees arrive in your doorstep.
Yes, so Lloyd's right. I spent a week with Lloyd and his lovely wife Linda, along with several other couples, and together with my wife, we created a plan for our second half of life together. And it became more and more apparent as we did that work together, that there was a bit of a trade-off involved with me spending time at the ranch and fulfilling that purpose versus spending time with my spouse and my children. Uh, I learned, I don't know, maybe a year ago, but I don't think any of my children want to become cowboys. So that was a challenge. Uh, at the same time, my heart was broken in August 2020, 2021. Sorry, when I saw all those Afghans that helped the United States and really tried to create a better life for themselves and a better country, um, standing, looking rather hopeless and afraid on the tarmac at Kabul airport. Um, and that heartbreak stayed with me. I kind of ignored it. I think anytime probably anyone from halftime turns the news on, there's at least one or two stories that really are heartbreaking. Um, but but I think the persistence of that feeling led me to spend some time in prayer and action. So this continues to nag at me. What do I do about it? Um, so I called some of the resettlement agencies locally in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and just by way of background, Minneapolis, Minnesota historically has been a very welcoming community to refugees. Going back to the Vietnam era, up into the Somali crisis, and then some of the Syrian refugees, and now lately with the Afghan refugees. So we have an established network of resettlement agencies here, and when I called each of them, they were kind of panicked because they were going to receive up to 5,000 refugees in a 60 to 90-day window, when normally our community absorbs that number over a 2 to 3 year period of time. And at the same time, there's a bit of a housing crisis going on in the United States, and Minneapolis isn't immune to it. We have a shortage of housing, and because of that, housing is very expensive, whether you want to rent it or buy it. And that was the number one issue that these resettlement agencies cited as a gating issue. Um, but so I felt compelled to step in because I could. I've been blessed with a great career. It was financially rewarding. Um, I felt this pivot coming on, and through conversations and prayer, this really seemed like something I ought to get involved with. Um, and so anyway, long story short, we've purchased about 8 homes. We house 3 families right now, 27 individuals, and we hope to grow that to 50 homes, be able to support 50 refugee families in a sustainable manner. That's important. Um, Before I came to halftime, Lloyd, if you'll allow me this quick aside, I was a victim of, I got sloppy busy. I spent a lot of time on boards. We wrote a lot of checks to charities, but it was unfulfilling. It didn't fill my heart. It stimulated me to some extent intellectually, and quite frankly, it probably stroked my ego a little bit. Um, but the the only way to make this work, and the way that I feel like I'm being called, is that this needs to have some permanence and some sustainability behind it. So that's the first leg of the stool to the platform I'm trying to build, Lloyd.
So part of what I hear you saying was you had to kind of let one dream go for a season, perhaps, and trust God that He knew what He was doing, and deal with the grief of that. And then I've watched as you've embraced the more time with the family. In fact, when we talked last night, you were cooking Taco Tuesday, Taco Tuesday, in your first 25 years of family stuff. I don't know if you did a lot of cooking. And Annie's got a couple of restaurants, so she's busy providing meals for thousands of people all the time. But you've been able to reallocate some time to the boys because you can see how fleeting that time is, and then really start to study what it takes to help these people. And what I like is that what I hear that strikes me as really wise is that you've told me that you've worked on scaling up at a sustainable pace so that you can provide them housing, and you can help them get the language, and you can help them get jobs, and you can help the kids get in school and do well, and you can help them get around town because you hired a driver for them because they can't get licenses. So now several of them are getting licenses, right? And with that model, now you're buying additional properties and working with an architect to create kind of high density places that they can come in, they can spend a season, get established, and then move on. So take us deeper now into this model that's in your mind that might even be replicable around the country. If you're in another city and you're a Halftime alumni and this resonates with you, one of the things Jason and I talked about today was packaging this up almost like a franchise so that you could do the same thing, invest in real estate in your community, and bring these wraparound services. So, Jason, talk about what does a family need, and also don't miss out on telling me about how you could have tea with their families pretty much every afternoon, right?
So first of all, one of the things that really fills my joy bucket is to see these families and how grateful they are to be in a home, and just how happy they are. And as we've been involved with them, um, they need just about everything. So you can imagine leaving a country with a backpack and trying to start a new life. And that's basically the story of the Afghan refugees that have arrived here in the US. They didn't have time to gather suitcases, and if they did, they may have been stopped by the Taliban and told to go home. So they had to be a bit incognito as they made their way to Kabul and the airport. Um, but but that's been great, and side benefits have been my kids are involved with what we're doing. They're helping these families adjust, and we're learning new things every day. We brought our dogs over to my oldest son brought our dogs over to one of the family's homes, and they had to leave their pets behind, and the family was really missing their dogs, and they were so happy to spend some time with these dogs. um, but stepping back and really taking a look at the vision, how can we do this for 50 families? That's the goal. um, and how can we do it without having to drain, let's say, our own family's bank account, or ask for money from every year. And the concept that we have is to try. We have some architectural renderings of redeveloping a portion of Minneapolis, very close to transit lines, close to decent schools, safe neighborhood. The families would be integrated into a middle class, upper middle class part of town. But the concept is to build 20 3 to 4 bedroom houses, and then On top of that, we'll have a bunch of 1-bedroom and studio apartments. The 1-bedroom and studio apartments will be market rate, and they're going to subsidize those 20 units of affordable housing. We're going to price those units at about 50% of average median income. And for those of you on the call in the United States, that's set by HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, every year sets those levels, and that's what defines affordable housing here in the United States. But after that, we're hopeful that these families will spend 1 to 2 years in these units, and then we'll be able to open a door for them to home ownership, whether it's something that we build ourselves on a city lot. We're working on designs for a 3 to 4 unit family house on one city lot, higher density, but to be able to offer those to families for $250,000 versus, our average median price here in the Twin Cities right now is about $350. Could be a great benefit. It will create long-term financial security. Numerous studies have shown, whether you're a refugee or a citizen of the United States, that home ownership leads the way to financial security. 2, it'll cement these families in neighborhoods, and their children will be able to consistently go to the same educational institution day in and day out. It's a real challenge for these kids if they're switching schools every year, moving to a new rental unit, moving to a different part of town to chase cheaper rents. And then thirdly, it would be a for sale product, so that once the units were sold, we could take that money and reinvest it in another lot and create 4 more brand new single family homes for these families to keep moving into. And that's a little bit of the vision. And I get really pumped up thinking about it. It excites me, and it really excites a lot of the refugee resettlement agencies that are here in Minneapolis too.
Well, thank you, Jason. So, Doug, the poll seems to indicate that that the interest is around. I'm not that confident about pivoting, right? And for goodness sakes, you've got things that have emerged in your life that I would have never expected when you started your halftime journey. And I know that you have you've had to really look to the Lord for clarity, and Jason, you have as well. So Doug, what are your thoughts about that? That when you come upon a big sort of right turn or left turn, it looks like it's out of sync. How have you followed that?
Well, probably not as well as I would like to think I do. It really forces you to get on your knees and seek out God's wisdom, and at the same time to have trust and to take some small steps in the direction that you think you're being led. And boy, it's encouraging when you see a little momentum from these blind faith steps that you take. And really, I think you can kind of eventually see some momentums. It's not without its ups and downs, but it's quite an adventure, and I highly recommend it.
And Doug, you can see it right in Jason's face that the affirmation, the joy of what it's bringing to him and what his family's experiencing, the difference it's making in these families' lives. And the kids are engaged in school already and off and running. And how many, Jason, of the I think all the men that you're helping have jobs now, and one of the spouses already?
Correct. Yep. All 3, if you'll pardon the expression, heads of household have jobs, and The kids are all enrolled in school. We've enrolled them in soccer, in a recreational soccer / football league for the summer, so that they can, meet more people and enjoy some physical activity. And so they're off and running. And, the next challenge that I'm working with one of these resettlement agencies on is to get those that have work, get them better work. So better paying jobs, get them trained. One fellow, just anecdotally, he worked in the Afghan army, and he drove military vehicles and fixed them, and was a really competent individual, but lacks the English language skill. But his dream is to be a truck driver. You pick up a newspaper, 2 days out of 5, you'll see a shortage of truck drivers here in the U.S. But if we could help him fulfill that dream, that'd be great. Another guy's a vet, and we need to help him work through getting his Afghanistan veterinary license translated over here to the U.S. So those are just a couple examples, but yeah, there's a lot to do, but they're on safe footing now. Safe house, kids are in school, dads have jobs, and so that first 90, 180 days has worked out great. God has been good.
So that's 30 people, and then soon it'll be, 50 families, say 150, 200 people, and they'll move through, and there'll be other crises that you can help with in the future. So Doug, why don't you, wrap up our time here in the first half, and then we'll move into whatever question or two there might be before we wrap up for the night.
All right. Jason, one of the things I'd like is for those that are not going to stay for our questions, if someone just joined late, but maybe they heard enough about your story that here you were in the financial industry for most of your career, and all of a sudden you are pursuing Afghan refugees and preserving America's beautiful grasslands, that's a pretty big shift. So let's say somebody else is watching the news and there's something they see, like the moment you saw all these poor souls standing at Kabul airport, and they've just had this tug in their heart that what do I do? But I'm a financial guy. What am I doing chasing Afghan refugees? How would you summarize your experience and what you learned from making that shift?
So jokingly, I could say, call Lloyd. And that's always a great strategy to get clarity. But more seriously, Doug, I think it was the persistence of the feeling. So I know there's been only one constant in my life, and that's been the Lord in my heart. He's never left me, and he's been persistent, because I know that I've left him from time to time, and that paying attention to that persistence was important. 2, prayer. The Franciscans taught me about this prayer examen, and one of the tenets of it was to imagine an outcome. And how do you feel? Do you feel despair, or do you feel joy? And when I imagine the outcome of this housing, education, and financial security for these new American families, I feel joyful. My joy cup is full. And then lastly, I've also been taught, sometimes the hard way, that if you follow God's purpose in my life and in my experience, I may not have all the answers, and I may not have it all figured out, but I know good things are going to happen. And who knows what's next for our family around the corner. The gift is really to us, not to these families.
And Doug, the big pivot for Jason was that he's selling the ranch, and it'll probably sell this spring. I'm sure it will. And it doesn't mean the dream dies, but it means that he's listening. The Bible says, "I'll guide you with my eye." And so he's keeping eye contact with God to say, okay, well, I can come back to that. I can buy another ranch later. The grasslands will wait, but these urgent needs are for now. And I hope to be able to do that in my life, Jason. So it's inspiring. Neither you nor I want to chase shiny objects and just fritter away our time and get sloppy busy with all kinds of different things. But nor do we want to get stuck in something without paying attention to what God's doing in the changing circumstances around us. And so I've seen this happen in my life, and even recently, you mentioned, Doug, that, I've seen a need between so many of the halftime men and women I coach that want to mentor young emerging Christian entrepreneurs, and they can't find them. So, my latest pivot, Jason, is starting something called ardentmentoring.org, where we're matching talented halftime alumni with young emerging Christian entrepreneurs that are building organizations that run like a business but serve like a ministry. They're a social enterprise. And it's a pivot for me, even though I'm still focused, obviously, on all of my halftime stuff. So I think the big opportunity is to stay agile. There's a verse in the Bible that talks about the potter's field, and it was where the potter throws the clay when it's no longer flexible. And I want to stay the clay that God can continue to flex and reshape until I'm 85 or something, maybe 86. So, Doug, let's look at questions. If there's a question, maybe we can spend some time on that. If you've got more time, Jason.
Absolutely. Happy to answer any and all questions.
Lloyd, I think that the main question is focused around spontaneity and having margin. So the discussion we touched on earlier, that there's a tendency to get sloppy busy. Jason, it sounds like you were very busy before you dove into all this, but you didn't find fulfillment. How do you address people who want to stay busy? I mean, they've stayed busy their whole lives, but they need enough margin to be able to respond to a heart tug like you felt when you saw on TV the folks on the cobble runway. Lloyd, maybe you can start with that one.
Well, one way that I've found to retain margin is to not say yes to things that don't fit your purpose statement. That's the first thing. And secondly, be willing to do what Peter Drucker called planned abandonment. Planned abandonment is when, on a periodic basis, you go back through the list of everything you're committed to, and you rank order it in terms of its value, and you jettison the bottom things. It's like what Jack Welch did when he fired the bottom 10% of performing staff, right? It sounds kind of ruthless, but eventually you get to a lean and mean organization. And for years, Linda and I have made a list of all the commitments that we make, regular activities that show up on our calendar. And then we rank order those based on our heart, impact, growth, and obligation. In other words, and you can get this, we'll send this exercise to you on email when we're done, to how much is it touch my heart, like Jason was talking about? To what degree am I growing as a person? To what degree am I making an impact? And to what degree I have an obligation? Obviously, I can't say I'm quitting being a parent or a grandparent. I signed up for that. That's a high obligation. But there are some things I've had that are good that I've jettisoned along the way, so I could say yes to the best things. So the first thing I think is to have a planned abandonment strategy, and to retain time to just think and sit and reflect and look for opportunities and see what's really happening. And Jason, I noticed in today's Wall Street Journal, there's a whole section here on, I turned the page over, there's a whole section here on Afghan refugees, and it's your time to just reflect on what's happening in the world and think, how could I show up? But what do you see, Jason? I mean, you've been, starting a new fund and doing other investing. You got your own investing to do, and you got kids and a lot of busy stuff. How did you create the margin to be spontaneous and start exploring this?
Yeah, I think it started with the planned abandonment of what I thought was going to be my full-time focus and purpose. I think abandonment might be too strong of a word, but I put that on the shelf for now, and made the decision, like you said, Lloyd, to sell our ranch out west. And that wasn't an easy decision. I love that place, and my heart will be there. I love the community, and I really like the team of folks we have working there as well. But I had to do something, and that was it. That created some space for me to pursue this. Number two, I was joking with Lloyd ahead of this call. I could spend hours having tea with these families. They want me to have tea with them every time I come to visit, and I do, but not every time. And so I was spending a little bit too much time helping with the day-to-day. So we hired some people who are really interested in that job, who want to, and they're gonna be the drivers now for a while. So I can focus my efforts on this redevelopment and some of the other bigger picture issues. But that's, in a nutshell, the planned abandonment, and then just filling in areas where, to your earlier point, Lloyd, where you're looking at it and going, okay, what kind of impact am I having? And I'm having an impact. I'm helping, but I need to get out of the weeds and be able to rise above that and spend more time on things that I hope will have a bigger impact.
And then Jason and Doug, the other way to create capacity is to add capacity, to accretive, to say, first of all, who are the best thinkers around the country that are already doing this, that I could build on their best practices and innovation? And then who else would like to be part of my team? There are probably people listening to our talk now, Jason, that are saying, hey, what's his number? How could I get a hold of Jason? I want to try to help with that, or maybe do that in my own community, right? And so if that interests you, just click on Contact Lloyd, and I will personally introduce you to Jason. And not only that, but he and I are working on who else is great at this. Just like when you were working on the ranch lands, I connected you with Lamar and other people that are Halftime alumni that are great ranchers, and they're innovative thinkers. And so you don't only have to think about reducing what time you're spending on other stuff like your own investments or maybe your job if you're still working, but even more importantly, who else could be part of this team? Like Doug, you and I do this together. And this is your calling, and I'm really just helping you with this. And together we can do a lot more than I could ever do just on my own.
Well, I think that kind of wraps up today's program, Lloyd. And I just want to thank Jason. First of all, thanks for everything you're doing in America's grasslands and helping the Afghan refugees, the ones who helped us while our country was in Afghanistan. And Lloyd, yes, these are just great programs. Thank you for your time that you take to prepare for these events. And we look forward to doing more of these. Always anxious to hear your ideas and topics. So if you think of one, write it there in the chat. And otherwise, we will see you in about another month. So thank you, everybody. Have a
Thanks,
good
Jay.
evening. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Lloyd.